All right, so I'm going to get started just by introducing myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Friedlich, and I'm from the Pennington Public Library. Thank you for joining us tonight for our program on stormwater management. If you have any questions during the program, you can write them in the Q&A section, which is at the bottom of your screen. If you don't have your screen maximized, you might have to push the three little buttons that say more, and you might find it there. And then I will take those questions and answers, organize them, and then I will provide them to the presenter during her Q&A part of the program. All other comments or anything that you need to direct towards me can be placed in the chat window, and I will be monitoring that throughout the program. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our presenters. We have two presenters tonight, Steve Tuarto and Olivia Spildooren, join us from the Watershed Institute in Hopewell Township, New Jersey, not too far from our Pennington Public Library. The Watershed Institute works to protect and restore our water and natural environment in central New Jersey through conservation, advocacy, science, and education. Olivia Spildooren serves as the Watershed's river-friendly coordinator. And in this role, she works with residents, schools, businesses, and golf courses to recognize and further their environmental stewardship actions and knowledge. And she will be our main presenter tonight. Steve Tuarto is the Director of Science and Stewardship for the Watershed Institute. His work focuses on studying water quality with respect to land use, development, and restoration work, particularly with regard to stormwater management. So thank you for joining us today, Steve and Olivia. Welcome. You can turn on your cameras and just so everyone can see what you look like. Just put a face to the name, and we will get started there, Steve. All right, thank you guys for joining us. We're happy to have you. I will turn my camera off so that we can get started, and then you can feel free to take it away.
Great. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking to you about stormwater and green infrastructure. So let me share my screen. Hopefully you're seeing my presentation. Just a confirmation that we're seeing my presentation. Okay, cool. So stormwater and green infrastructure. Let's start with the issues of where does stormwater come from and why is it an issue? So we can see in this map of observed US precipitation change from 1991 to 2012 that the dark green areas are showing where there's an increase in precipitation, and then the dark brown is showing where there's been less precipitation than normal. So we can see in the Midwest and then the Northeast that those dark green areas are getting larger and more spread out. So we have more precipitation happening. And then we also have the issue of more downpours, so more rain happening during those precipitation events. You can see here, there's been a 55% increase in heavy precipitation events in the Northeast since 1958. And then finally, we have this land cover animation. You'll want to look at how the red is changing from 1972 to 2010. The red indicates developed land, so places people live or where their businesses, things like that. And with developed land means impervious cover. Impervious cover being things that the water cannot infiltrate through. So we have more rain happening, larger storms, more impervious cover. This all adds up to more runoff or stormwater and issues with water quantity as well as quality. So first with quantity, this is a diagram that shows the difference in infiltration or runoff between natural ground cover versus very heavy impervious cover. And we can see that it goes, runoff in impervious cover goes from 10% to 55%. So half the water that's falling down is running off somewhere. And then the infiltration is going down from 25% to 5%. And that's something really important to think about is with less infiltration, this means decreased groundwater recharge, so less drinking water. And also with quantity, as Kristen mentioned before, increased flooding and erosion of stream banks are bigger issues, and erosion not only causes harm to the stream's ecosystem, but it also causes pollution to the water. So then we also have an issue of water quality. So these are all the things that could potentially go into the water, from pet waste, pesticides, fertilizers that are all maybe flowing off your lawn, to antifreeze or petroleum products coming from your car, road salts in the winter, and maybe cleaners going down your drain, or you're using outside. And this is an issue because it not only hurts the things that are in the stream, but it hurts the uses that the human uses of water, such as drinking water, fish used for consumption, and also recreation, using it for fun. And so just to orient ourselves, thinking about where the stormwater runoff is going that we were just talking about, this is a map of Pennington Borough from the Watershed Institute's Impervious Cover Assessment reports that we'll talk about a little later. And here's the outline of the borough. And there are two sub-watersheds. One is the Stony Brook, which flows from the Stony Brook to the Millstone to the Raritan River. And then the green one goes from Woolsey Brook to Jacobs Creek and then into the Delaware River. And from that, we can think about impervious cover in Pennington. And here is another example from the impervious cover assessment. It shows the different levels of impervious cover in Pennington. And we can see here that there's an average of 29% impervious cover. But what does that mean exactly? So here's a model of impervious cover impact on stream quality. You can see it goes 10, 25, 40, 60%, and then sensitive, impacted, and non-supporting. So with Pennington being at 29% impervious cover, that's putting it in the impacted, non-supporting range for stream quality, which is not good for water quality, and all the reasons listed before. So what can we as individuals or communities do about stormwater? Well, for starters, we can think about installing some green infrastructure. So we have this bland picture here, gray, water just pooling. Instead, we can add something colorful and also functional. So green infrastructure can come in many forms, not just this garden here, but it helps because it localizes your stormwater management, meaning it catches the runoff before it leaves your property, meaning less flooding and also less potential for it to pick up pollution, like the pictures we saw on the water quality slide. And green infrastructure uses the natural water cycle processes, such as infiltration, rather than mass collection and drainage to a stream like conventional storm drains. And finally, we can think about depaving or removing impervious surfaces like sidewalks or hard roads, or mitigating the impacts of those impervious surfaces that we cannot remove. So how much stormwater does your property produce? This is something that I feel like I did not know until recently, and then a lot of people don't know. But here we have some calculated amounts of runoff. We can see that off this patio that's 400 square feet, in a 1-inch rainstorm, it will create 240 gallons of water, and that's equivalent to almost 50 5-gallon buckets, which I've put here for an example. And so you can imagine having all those filled buckets and then just spilling them over. And that's how much water is going to be running off that patio. And we can also think that you have that patio, you have a garage roof, you have a house roof. There's a lot of water that's going to be coming off your property and going somewhere, whether that be into the storm drain, into your basement, into your neighbor's basement, or also contributing to flooding or pollution. So there are also other factors besides the obvious hard surfaces like patios or roofs, but also things like improperly installed gutter systems, like we can see in these first two photos, or soils that are compacted or clay that don't allow the water to infiltrate as it should. Landscaping that can create dams in your yard, like in the lower left, or the lack of or improper placement of trees. Trees are actually very great sponges for water. A mature red maple can actually absorb about 6,000 gallons of water per year. So thinking about what we were talking about before with the patio or the roof and how many gallons that creates, having a tree that can absorb 6,000 gallons will be really great for your stormwater management. So some of the ways to help, I said, were green infrastructure, and we're going to take a little tour of some different kinds that you could potentially install on your property or in your community. Here we have an example of pervious pavement, some depaving, just taking out parts of the hardscape, a green roof, and a rain garden. So take a pause, see if there are any questions so far before I go on to the green infrastructure tour.
Olivia, I'll just unmute. I won't turn my video on, but we don't have any questions yet, but let's just pause for a second and see if anyone wants to put anything in the Q&A for Olivia to answer. I did actually have a question. Do you have any resources or any suggestions of just somebody that would be able to help, the average person who doesn't know about how to make a rain garden or how to design their landscaping in a way that would be beneficial for stormwater management? Are there any resources that the watershed has that they could provide for companies or just any other resources for creating those types of things?
Yeah, actually later in my presentation, I have a bunch of resources that I can either share this PowerPoint and you can share it out with people, or as maybe like a document with all the links to different books or websites that can give people a good overview of things like rain gardens or green roofs or rain barrels. We also have a list of local landscape professionals that you can contact and ask about different types of green infrastructure, or for them to come out and look at your property and see what they think is a good idea, or if you have your own ideas, you can bounce it off of them. So yeah.
Okay, great. We'll make sure that we kind of put that whole list together for everyone to look at after the talk. We don't have any questions yet, so I guess we'll just continue. If you do have a question, just put it in the Q&A. If you can't figure out the Q&A, you can chat it to me. That's fine too. All right, thanks.
Okay, great. We'll move on to our green infrastructure tour. Let's see if I can. There we go. Okay, so first on the tour are green roofs. Here's a photo of the green roof on top of the Watershed Institute's center. They can help reduce the volume of stormwater running off a building's roof, reducing flooding and pollution. And also some benefits of them are they can increase savings on heating and cooling, because they can keep buildings cooler in the summer and insulate from heat loss in the winter, which is really great. And in addition, the green roof has many layers of protective material between the actual roof and the garden. So this helps preserve the underlying roof from the typical sun and weather damage. Plus, it can make a drab gray roof look so colorful and beautiful, like this photo with all of the yellow coreopsis blooming. And then these are typically built on flat roofs or one with not a very steep pitch, so they're not necessarily practical for most homes' roofs, but you might be able to put it on a garage or potentially on new construction if you're creating your house from scratch and intentionally build it to be able to add this. Next, we have rain barrels. These are really good because they help you reuse the rainwater that's coming off your roof. It means you have to pay less for water, use less water as well. It can help reduce the amount of water that's going into the storm drains, again, reducing flooding and pollution. They're easy to install and also pretty fun to make. You can adapt it to whatever you would like and the amount of stormwater you want to collect. So normally you attach these to the downspout on the side of your house. So you could have one, like in this picture here, that's at a park, or you could have a couple attached together for more storage. There are also options if you want to collect a lot of water for things called cisterns, which are usually much bigger than these barrel type structures and can either be put above or below water or below ground. The barrels are also fun because they can become an art project, and I've seen some really beautifully painted ones. Next, we have Pervious Pavement. So there are many choices. There's porous asphalt, pervious concrete, and also permeable pavers like in this photo. So they work by having the water, well, the pavers work by having water infiltrate in between the spaces in them. The porous asphalt or concrete work by having water flow through the pores, the open pores in them. So they're not like normal asphalt or concrete, which is more solid and wouldn't allow the water to go through. They infiltrate through these systems and then into the ground, slowing down runoff and increasing infiltration. Something to note for these is they do take some maintenance. They require sweeping and occasional vacuuming to make sure that the systems don't get clogged. But they can be a good idea if you have a small area that you want to be more pervious. And so you just have to choose what's best for your time and space. And then we get to my favorite one, rain gardens. They're also called bioretention systems, but they're really popular because, like I said earlier, they combine beauty with function. So with the help of native plants and amended soil, the natural process of infiltration can occur during a rainstorm. So here we can see a photo of a rain garden outside the Watershed Center, which receives water from the roof here. We can see how it's all channeled in that kind of V shape in the roof and also off the surrounding sidewalks. And so during a storm, the rainwater will collect in the rain garden and you will see some water pooling, but that will drain within 24 hours, which is not enough time for mosquito larvae or mosquitoes to breed and larvae to hatch. They actually need 10 days for that full cycle to happen. And like with other types, this collects water, reduces flooding and runoff pollution potential. It also serves as a dual purpose. All these flowers and different plants can be a habitat for pollinators like bees or butterflies and also local birds. So that's one benefit of the beautiful plants here. And another thing that I wanted to mention was I said you should plant native plants. And so here's an example of the stark difference between non-natives and native plants' root structures. It's really amazing how deep the native plants' roots go. And this is why they're a good fit for the rain garden, because they're able to really get into the soil and infiltrate the water deep into the ground and keep it there. And also the long roots help the plant to be able to be more resilient in times of drought, as well as times of waterlogged times. And yeah, for this green infrastructure, the maintenance requirements are pretty low, but it should be known that in the beginning, you do have to put some TLC into them to make sure that they function how they should. So in the first growing season that a rain garden is put in, it requires regular watering, usually at least once a week, and then that slows down once that's become more established. Occasional weeding is also needed to make sure invasive plants do not invade your native garden. And yeah, but with the hard work in the beginning, they become pretty low maintenance and only need to be watered during times of prolonged drought. So continuing on the topic of native plants, you can reduce your lawn area by creating meadows or low mow areas. These work similar to the rain garden with infiltration and using the properties of native plants. They're very low maintenance. They're not no mow, but they're very low mow. Usually you only need to cut them down once a year, occasionally every 2 years or every other year, depending on your maintenance plan. And they have their water cycle benefits, reducing runoff and increasing infiltration, but also they are great wildlife habitat for bees, butterflies, creatures big and small. But a caveat for this is make sure to check with your local laws or ordinances before planting a meadow, because sometimes they're not allowed under noxious weed laws, or you just have to make it look more maintained so that they don't think that you're just letting your lawn be unmanaged. And then finally, we end the tour with a kind of fun green infrastructure, sometimes called a rain garden in a box, also called a downspout planter. These are pretty fun. You can get creative with making them. They reuse the stormwater by connecting the drain into anything from these kind of raised stone beds to these concrete cylinders, or kind of like a livestock trough over there, funneling the water into those to water the plants, native plants within them, and then also slowing down the water. It can still have an outlet because a lot of water is going to come through there and could fill up that section, but you'll have an outlet, but that outlet will be slowing down the water instead of it just rushing from your roof to the storm drain. And you can get creative with these. Like these photos show all the different ways people have adopted the downspout planter. So I've talked about all these different types of green infrastructure, but are they actually effective? So we found this really cool study that was done in Burnsville, Minnesota, where they studied 2 similar and adjacent watersheds in a neighborhood. And this is a graph of, in a 1/2-inch rainfall, the volume of water that ran off in the 2 watersheds. So the control is the blue and the study area is the red. So then this is a picture of after they installed 17 rain gardens in the study area neighborhood, and we can see a dramatic decrease in the red line, or the study area, in the amount of water that ran off in that area, in the study area where all the rain gardens were, compared to the control area where no green infrastructure was added. And so I have a picture. If you weren't stunned enough by the last graph, you can see here their control area and then their study or treatment area for scale. And then to the right, this is a picture of where they put all of the rain gardens. So we can see just along one street, they put 17 different rain gardens, and we're able to decrease the amount of runoff very dramatically with just the installation of rain gardens. So this shows that if they're installed correctly, they work very well. And so finally, I mentioned before with those the maps and graphs that I showed you that the watershed created impervious cover assessments. They did this for Pennington, but also 15 other municipalities in our watershed. And so these reviewed land use and impervious cover percentages. They calculated stormwater runoff in major storm events, and also identified some potential sites for restoration, and created or designed over 150 green infrastructure installations that custom for that area. So you can view those yourself at the link below. They're really cool. They have a lot of graphics, and it's really interesting to, and if you're interested in installing some green infrastructure, you can see a design plan and what goes into that. So as I mentioned before, here are some resources about native plants. I really like Jersey Friendly Yards because it's very user-friendly. There are a lot of pictures. So those are very good. Here are some books that you can get off of Amazon, or you can probably find online. Here's also a very good list of native plant suppliers that are mostly local, that the watershed uses and trusts to have true native plants, and they have a good selection. We especially like Bowman's Wildflower Preserve, Ernst Seeds, and Kind Earth Growers. They're all very good. If you're interested in learning more about rain gardens, here's some resources. Again, Jersey Friendly Yards has some really good graphics, as well as these manuals, either the Rain Garden Manual of New Jersey, or the Rain Garden Manual from the Native Plant Society of New Jersey. They're good for if you're just interested in learning the basics, lots of pictures, or if you want to know some of the nitty-gritty stormwater calculation things, you can also find them there. And finally, for the Watershed Institute, you can, through the Watershed Institute on our website, you can see some local examples of green infrastructure on this Watershed Institute Green Infrastructure Atlas. Here, there are examples of anything from rain gardens to pervious pavement to cisterns and everything in between. There are photos, descriptions, again, kind of a catalog that you could go through to see if any of these are of interest to you. And then finally, I couldn't end the presentation without talking a little bit about my job, the focus of my job, the River Friendly program. So the River Friendly program is a voluntary, non-regulatory program for individuals, schools, businesses, golf courses, and community partners that focuses on water quality management, water conservation, wildlife habitat enhancement, and also education and outreach. So the point of this is to encourage and commend the work of individuals or groups in environmental stewardship and environmental education. So as a resident, you can take this survey here. It's also virtual as a Google form, which I can send to you all. And some examples from this are that you pick up after your dog and dispose of their waste, or convert your lawn to native species, or have bird feeders to promote wildlife habitat on your land. So this is kind of like a non-exhaustive list of all the things you can do to help your watershed, and can help you see what you're already doing and what you could improve on. And if you get enough points, you can get this fun river-friendly sign that you can put in your yard to spark conversation between neighbors, friends, or family. So finally, I wanted to end with a little, I don't know, something, think differently. Don't follow the traditional sea of grass. Instead, think more river friendly. Do your best. You could add, even starting with just adding some more native plants to your yard, or creating rain gardens, adding a rain barrel. Every little thing is important and helps. And especially if you work together with your neighborhood, working collectively can lead to real change, like we saw in that stormwater study, where the rain gardens really did help reduce a lot of runoff and all the bad things associated with that. So thank you so much for listening. Love to answer any questions you have. And here's my contact information. I would love to hear from you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Olivia. If you guys have any questions, just put them into the Q&A. Give everybody a few minutes to think. I had a question. I know that you had a rain barrel workshop. I forget if that was last year or not. I just know that I have a rain barrel because we did the workshop from the watershed. So I was just wondering if that was something that you do regularly, or if you had any workshops like that planned for the future.
Yeah, we usually have that in either the fall or the spring. And I think this year we're going to be hosting it in the spring. So I will keep you in the loop about that when it's happening.
All right. No questions yet, but people are saying thank you and that it was very informative. So I have another question. My other question is, why do the non-native plants roots not go down as far as the native plants roots?
It's a good question. Well, I do know that native plants are more adapted to their location. So, and usually these native plants are perennials, and perennials live year to year. They don't die off. So they need that really strong root structure to be able to survive and adapt to the changing conditions. I don't know if Steve has any other insight on that. That's a very good question.
No, I mean, you pretty much explained it. It's all about evolution, you know, and when unbeknownst to us, we throughout our history just have brought things that we thought looked pretty from let's just say foreign lands, brought them over and planted them, and didn't know that they might someday sort of start to displace all of the native things, and it's become a matter of opinion, what looks nice and what doesn't. But the thing that we didn't realize sort of in that culture is that we're removing the things that have evolved to live in our climate, so that some of the things that we saw even in that graphic that Olivia shared was really showing some of the non-natives they evolved to live somewhere else, so they're doing their job there, but they didn't evolve to live here. So they tend to need more watering, tend to need more fertilizer, a lot more maintenance, but they also they don't support the natural healthy soil that is native to this area, which in and of itself really impacts the hydrology, how much water goes into the soil, how much it holds, and for how long and how deeply. But then if you just look at the root systems of the natives that have evolved to be here, it's a difference of, inches to feet in the non-natives versus multiple feet all the way to 8, 10, 12 feet in some of them. And that just has to do with where they evolved here. We're in a temperate area. So we have and a variable area. We have winter, we have summer, we have the in-betweens, but then we also have areas of intense rain or periods of intense rain and periods of intense drought. And so, that root system has evolved so that they can withstand all of that. And so, that not only does that penetrate and essentially, make pathways for the water to travel directly and be part of the natural hydrology here, but it also increases the actual root surface of the plants so they can drink more of that water. I mean, they drink an intense amount of water. One of the graphics that Olivia showed in the beginning was the natural unimpacted watershed as compared to one that's been heavily impacted. And one of the actual statistics that stands out to me there is that at least half of the water that falls on the ground on average in a year should actually end up in the ground with one pathway or another. But almost all the rest of it should end up either evaporating or transpiring from native vegetation. So if we don't have those plants that can drink up a lot of that water, that's another big disconnection from the water cycle. Trees alone in the temperate area can, depending on the tree, but something such as like an older native oak tree will drink 25 or 30,000 gallons a year. And they actually can drink so thoroughly and deeply in a day during the growing season that they change the level of a stream if they're next to it. They'll actually decrease the height of the stream. And so when we remove those, cut those down near a stream or even near our house, that water has to go somewhere. It's no longer being taken up. So.
All right, thank you. We do not have any additional questions. If any of you who are watching think of questions after this is over, you can feel free to email me and I will pass them along to our presenters. I will also pass along information that Olivia will provide to me afterwards. And if you enjoyed this program and you are interested in sharing it with a friend or just watching it again, it will be on our YouTube channel. So you can just go to YouTube and search for Pennington Public Library and you will find us there. You can look at things we've done in the past or subscribe to get programs that we will do in the future as well. Speaking of upcoming programs, I think Olivia, if you could stop sharing your screen, I am going to share my upcoming adult programs. We have quite a few planned throughout the year, but our ones that are upcoming, we have Bridge Builder in Petticoats, which is a living history presentation about Emily Warren Roebling and the Brooklyn Bridge. We also have on Friday, October 29th, we have Edgar Degas, Private Paradox, presented by our art educator, Janet Mandel. And then for our babies and our preschoolers, and we have our outdoor story time on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. from October 13th through the 27th. That's outside with me. So just make sure you bring a chair or a blanket for that. And then we also have Let's Draw Monsters with award-winning cartoonist Rick Stromasky, who this program is for our slightly older crew from about ages 6 and up. And he will be working with them to show them how to draw creatures, goblins, all the Halloween stuff. Again, if you would like to get any more information, you can feel free to go on over to our website, www.penningtonlibrary.org, and check out all the things that we have there. Thank you on behalf of the Pennington Public Library for attending our program tonight. Thank you again to Olivia and Steve for joining us and sharing their knowledge with us as well. All right, thank you everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.